Fatal fixation, dark desires. In the bustling city of Metropolis, where skyscrapers touched the sky and the pulse of commerce was relentless, lived a successful businessman named David Langford. He was known for his charm, his sharp mind, and his unwavering determination. He had built his empire from the ground up and was admired by many. However, admiration often turned into obsession, and one woman in particular had crossed that line. Clara Hayes was a woman of unremarkable background, blending into the fabric of society with ease. But beneath her ordinary exterior lay a mind consumed by obsession. Clara had been infatuated with David Langford since she first saw him at a business conference. His confidence, his power, and his undeniable charisma had captivated her. What started as innocent admiration quickly spiraled into a dark fixation. Clara's obsession grew. She followed David's every move, learned his routines, and even managed to infiltrate his social circles under various guises. She was a ghost, ever present, yet unseen, her obsession guiding her every action. But admiration turned to jealousy, and jealousy turned to rage whenever David showed interest in another woman. David, unaware of the shadow that lurked behind him, continued with his life, dating occasionally, as any bachelor of his stature would. His dates were often glamorous, successful women who matched his ambition and drive. But each date seemed to end in tragedy. The first murder was a shock. Emily Turner, a renowned fashion designer, was found dead in her apartment just days after a dinner date with David. The cause of death was ruled asphyxiation. The police had no leads, and the case went cold. Then, there was Sarah Mitchell, a rising star in the world of finance. She was found in her car, the victim of a staged accident. And then came Vanessa Blake, a celebrated author whose lifeless body was discovered in her study, the apparent victim of a brutal stabbing. Each murder followed a pattern. The women were all last seen with David, and each met a gruesome end shortly thereafter. The police began to connect the dots, and suspicion fell heavily on David. Was he a charming businessman by day and a cold-blooded killer by night? Detective Laura Stevens, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind and a keen eye for detail, was assigned to the case. She couldn't shake the feeling that something didn't add up. David's alibis were always solid, and there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crimes other than his association with the victims. But the pressure from the media and the public was immense. David Langford, once a darling of the business world, was now under constant surveillance. His every move was scrutinized, and his reputation was in tatters. The police were convinced they had their man, but Detective Stevens wasn't so sure. Everything changed when Jennifer Collins, an acclaimed actress, was attacked. She had just returned home from a date with David when she was assaulted in her own home. The attacker had been meticulous, but Jennifer fought back fiercely. The struggle ended with Jennifer slipping into a coma, clinging to life by a thread. The attack on Jennifer Collins was the break Detective Stevens needed. The assailant had left behind a crucial piece of evidence, a strand of hair. Forensic analysis revealed it belonged to a woman. The police realized they were dealing with a female killer, someone who was framing David for her crimes. Jennifer's case became headline news. Her photograph, her story, and her condition were broadcast everywhere. The police suspected the killer would return to finish the job, to silence the only living witness who could potentially identify her. Detective Stevens devised a plan to catch the murderer. Undercover officers were stationed around the hospital, posing as medical staff, patients, and visitors. Security was tightened, and every entrance and exit was monitored. The hospital room where Jennifer lay in a coma was a trap, waiting for the stalker to make her move. Clara, driven by her obsession and the need to eliminate any threat to her secret, saw the news reports and knew she had to act. She couldn't risk Jennifer waking up and exposing her. Disguised as a nurse, she slipped into the hospital, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. As Clara approached Jennifer's room, she didn't notice the subtle signs of the trap set for her. She entered the room, a syringe filled with a lethal dose of poison in her hand. Just as she was about to administer the fatal injection, The room was flooded with light, and armed officers surrounded her. "Drop the syringe!" Detective Stevens commanded, her voice firm and unwavering. Clara froze, her eyes wide with shock and terror. The game was up. She had been caught. The syringe slipped from her fingers, and she sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The police moved in, handcuffing her and leading her away. The news of Clara Hayes' arrest sent shockwaves through Metropolis. The revelation of a female stalker and murderer who had framed an innocent man was a sensational story. David Langford was exonerated, his name cleared, though the scars of the ordeal would take time to heal. Jennifer Collins eventually emerged from her coma, her testimony crucial in convicting Clara. Detective Laura Stevens was hailed as a hero for her relentless pursuit of the truth and her clever strategy in capturing the real killer. Clara Hayes was tried and found guilty of multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, where she would have ample time to reflect on the darkness that had consumed her. David Langford, though forever changed by the experience, continued to rebuild his life and his business. He would never forget the women who had lost their lives because of one woman's twisted obsession. And Detective Laura Stevens moved on to her next case, ever vigilant, ever determined to see justice served.